Hello and welcome back to the channel, Chipmunk here. It's yet another video on my journey to watch every movie in the Turner Classic Movie Collection, or at least every one that they put up on the HBO/Max/whatchamahoochie. Full disclosure, I was going to do another video this week, but the movies that I needed to watch for that one, I had to request through the library. Now, those movies hadn't been pulled yet by Friday, when we were hit with just a bit of a polar vortex, and apparently this caused a pipe at the library to burst. So they closed up shop, and the library only opened back up yesterday, which was 4 days later. That did not give me enough time to get that video ready. So here we are doing another Turner Classic Movies a bit ahead of schedule. Okay, that out of the way. Here we go. Zabriskie Point, 1970, directed by Michelangelo Antonioni. Starring Mark Frechette and Daria Halprin. 1 hour and 52 minutes. This film started off promisingly enough. A group of college students is organizing a protest and, among other things, discussing the pros and cons of various tactics. I was very excited by this scene, as there were many parallels between that and today. Like, in certain places, this discussion could have been happening literally today, even down to whether or not it would be appropriate for white people to present themselves in a black space, and etc. Then we started focusing on the characters proper, and it went downhill from there. A young white boy shoots at a policeman, and I honestly didn't catch whether he hit him or not. Later he claims he didn't, but it doesn't seem to matter to the plot either way. The lad steals a small plane and takes it on a joyride over the desert, his path coinciding with that of a young woman who is trying and unable to find a Zen retreat, and simultaneously avoid her rich father and her responsibilities. She is charmed, somehow, by the young flyboys flying far too low over her car, which comes off as extremely dangerous and not charming at all. He lands and they join together on a day trip, which, among other things, involves the point of the title. There is a very long section where the two get to know each other in the carnal sense, and the scene turns a bit arty, with many couples suddenly appearing and rolling in the dust, which I didn't understand this part at all. The lad takes the plane back and ends up getting shot to death by the police, which frankly was stupid of him, as he knew they were looking for him. I guess he didn't expect to get shot, which you'd think would be a reasonable expectation, but then again, perhaps it's just white boy hubris, and I know this is very odd timing to go into this. I'm sorry. The gal is distraught when she learns of this, then heads to her father's house, wanders around a bit, then leaves and imagines the place blowing up in another extremely extended scene. And then she heads off into the sunset. I don't know. These types of films don't do it for me. I get and appreciate that not everything has to be a literal interpretation, like Impressionist or modern art. But I really like to personally understand the point behind things. Even if I don't agree with it, I still like an explanation of any kind. The only point I got here was, youth rules, capitalism sucks, which, okay, maybe not, but either way, it at least seemed like they took far too long trying to make this point. I didn't need 10 minutes of the house blowing up from various angles and then in slow motion, for example. Have you seen this film? Was there something I was missing? I would love to know if there was. Wife vs. Secretary, 1936. Directed by Clarence Brown. Starring Clark Gable and Myrna Loy. 1 hour and 28 minutes. This film was somewhat refreshing. You can guess from the title the basic idea. Gable and Loy, who keeps getting put in dresses that are just a little bit awkwardly shaped for her, I don't know why, they have been married for 3 years and are still madly in love. He is a high-powered magazine executive, and Jean Harlow is his highly capable secretary. Today she would be called an executive assistant. He and Harlow have the utmost respect for each other, but there's nothing that really might be called attraction there. Loy, for her part, isn't bothered either, until other people in their circle get wind of Gable having an extremely attractive assistant, and tongues start wagging. This gets to Loy despite herself, and she gets ticked at Gable for his not being perturbed, which causes the first rift in their marriage. Now, Harlow helps Gable with, among other things, a super-secret takeover of a rival magazine. The fact that it's so secret he even has to keep it from his wife is what moves the plot along, and is the weakest part of it, because why should he have to hide it from her? Eventually, Harlow and Gable end up in a situation where they do nearly end up getting in the wrong way with each other, but they recognize it as wrong and back away. Really, the whole thing is handled decently well overall. Jimmy Stewart has a supporting role as Harlow's fiancé, and although he has his reservations about her job as well, he ultimately supports her wanting to keep it. Good on him! I haven't seen Harlow in much, but she is excellent, very believable in her role. Her acting stands the test of time, and it's clear here that she was gone way too soon. Walk the Dark Street, 1956. Directed by Wyatt Ordung, starring Chuck Connors and Don Ross. 1 hour and 13 minutes. Ross is an ex-soldier who, after the war, goes to look up the older brother of a fallen comrade. Said brother, Connors, is a hunting aficionado with a bum ticker who harbors a secret hatred of Ross, whom he blames for his brother's death. He puts a challenge to Ross, a variation on the billionaire hunting people for sport type of plotline. The two of them will each have a rifle, outfitted with a camera to shoot pictures only. They will wander around the city and the area, constantly on the lookout for each other, and if Ross gets a photo of Connors first, he wins a bunch of money. Of course, Connors secretly switches his own gun to shoot bullets instead of pictures. Through the machinations of fate, plot, the rifles get switched and Connors goes down at the end. It's kind of hard to believe, at least in the circumstances of the movie, that these two fellows, stalwart white boys though they be, would be allowed to go around in public areas in 1956 whilst brandishing and cocking rifles unmolested. But then this is just not a very good movie overall. I applaud Ordung for having a vision and following it through, but this is a decidedly amateur film in just about every way possible. The acting is poor, the shots are badly set up, the sets are clearly cheap, the pacing is off, the editing is okay, which is the best I can say. This was Ordung's first film, but he never advanced beyond B pictures and television episodes. Walk Softly, Stranger, 1950. Directed by Robert Stevenson. Starring Joseph Cotten and Alida Valli. 1 hour, 21 minutes. Cotten is a small-time crook who comes back to his hometown and, only after organizing a robbery at a casino, attempts to go somewhat straight after reconnecting with school acquaintance Valli, who has wound up in a wheelchair. At the end, he gives himself up to the police. Spring Byington has an endearing role as Cotton's landlady, whose son was killed in the war, but overall, there really isn't anything particularly interesting about this film. I feel like Hollywood really didn't know what to do with Valli, as from what little I have seen, she's been far more interesting in her roles outside of it. This isn't a movie that sticks with you by any means, and it's nothing that hasn't been done before repeatedly. The Unsuspected, 1947. Directed by, I finally looked this up and the video on YouTube is telling me it's Michael Curtiz. Starring Joan Caulfield and Claude Rains. 1 hour and 43 minutes. This is one of those more or less suspense films, where you see the end coming, but it's interesting enough to see how they get there and pull it off. Rains is a radio show host who narrates suspenseful scripts based on real stories. At home, his rich family throws a party for him, to which arrives a man claiming to be the husband of one of his nieces, who is missing, presumed dead. Eventually, the niece does turn up, although she doesn't remember this man. Meanwhile, Rains' secretary has also died by what seems to be suicide. The strange man, however, disputes this and claims Caulfield's life is in danger and that he is here to help. It turns out in the end that Rains is behind it all, and Caulfield has to both protect herself and expose his dirty dealings. It's not everything it wants to be. I wouldn't buy it or anything, but on the whole, it's not too bad a yarn. Caulfield was an actress I wasn't familiar with. She never became big, but had a tidy Hollywood career, as well as many successful years on the stage and small screen, so kudos to her. Trouble Along the Way, 1953. Also directed by Michael Curtiz, starring John Wayne and Donna Reed. 1 hour and 40 minutes. Here's another one which is both good for what it is, but also quite very much dated. Wayne is a single father to a young daughter, and he's a very good father too on the whole. He's not too strict with her on schooling, and he's not too good with a regular job, but he does care for her very much, which is more than her mother, Marie Windsor, can say. A struggling Catholic school decides that the answer to their financial issues is to buck up their football team, and they hire Wayne as a live-in coach. Meanwhile, Reed is a representative from social services who comes to check on their living situation. She is frosty to Wayne at first, until he explains that she's forgotten what it's like to be a woman and just needs a man. At the same time, she explains to him that his daughter needs a female role model, as she is growing into a young lady and doesn't know what it's like to be a woman, that she herself had the same issues and it messed with her emotional development. Yes, it's one of those movies. Sidebar. I recently had a comment on another video stating that I shouldn't judge a, in that case, 1931 movie with 2026 eyes. Instead, to view it as an audience member of that time. And I would like to say that I am quite capable of doing both. It's important, I feel, to both see the perspective from which the movie was told and meant to be received, but also to see how that perspective has shifted over time, or even at the time. That particular movie was steeped in racism, and goodness knows there were plenty of folk who would have had an issue with that even in 1931. This commenter suggested a disclaimer at the beginning of the video instead of discussing it in said video, but that's not what I do here. I believe discussion of these things is important, and I encourage that through the comments, even their comment, which is in fact discussion thereof, and I appreciate it. So that said, this film is a case with blatant outdated sexist ideas in this particular movie. Those ideas, to quote the Warner Brothers disclaimer, were wrong then, and they are wrong now. They were rampant at the time, ideas which were very popular in at least the American white bread community, but that doesn't mean they were right. And I believe that kind of thing merits discussion, otherwise how will we learn from our collective mistakes? So I'd actually recommend this film to watch and think about, to discuss, to appreciate it on its merits, and learn from its flaws. And there are many instances where you can do that. Except the 1931 film mentioned, it wasn't just that it was racist, it was just a damn bad movie. But this one has its errors, but also has its good points. That is a thing that is possible, and I would never say otherwise. Today We Live, 1933, directed by Howard Hawks, starring Joan Crawford and Gary Cooper. 1 hour and 53 minutes. Whew boy, is this an awkward movie. Crawford is an English gal whose father is killed in World War I. Cooper is the American who comes on the heels of the news to claim property to her estate. Despite it all, they fall in love. However, Crawford also has a long-time understanding with her brother's childhood friend and cares for him enough that she can't bear to break his heart. The war intervenes, during which Crawford, who volunteers for the Red Cross and is thus able to meet up with her brother and friend, believes Cooper is dead, gives up her virginity to the friend, a quite young Robert Young, finds out Cooper is alive. Cooper is jealous of Young and finagles him into a dangerous situation. Young not only survives the situation, but handles himself so well that he earns Cooper's respect. Then Young gets blinded, but he manages to see that Crawford is really in love with Cooper and lets her go to him. However, Cooper, believing he will never get Crawford, has already volunteered for a suicide mission, but Young and Crawford's brother, played by, another one I can't pronounce, Franchotto, take his place and end up dying, leaving Crawford free from even emotional constraints. Interestingly, Crawford ended up marrying said brother, Tone, in real life. There is one point I liked. When Crawford meets up with Cooper and realizes A, he's alive, and B, she's already given up her virginity to someone else, a thing they both take quite seriously, she is too emotional to really deal with him at that point. Cooper keeps at her, but a fellow soldier intervenes and tells Cooper to lay off. Respect for the woman's space. I dig it. The movie, however, is an overwrought soap opera, with Young's nearly perpetually upbeat fellow being the only bright spot. Glaringly, I find it funny how much flack Kevin Costner gets for not even attempting an English accent for his turn as Robin Hood, when actors have been doing the same thing for years. Crawford and Young don't sound in the least bit British, and it's hilarious whenever anyone refers to them as such. Although they're trying their best, or close to, I really don't believe Cooper and Crawford as a couple. The entire thing is a bit slow, with the director's enthusiasm really only showing in the action sequences, and the emotions don't come through as genuine. There are better war/love dramas out there than this one. 30 Seconds Over Tokyo, 1944. Directed by Mervyn LeRoy. Starring Spencer Tracy and Van Morrison. 2 hours and 18 minutes. Speaking of better war dramas, this is one of them. Van Morrison is the real star here, a pilot sent on a secret mission to drop bombs over enemy territory. They end up getting shot down and spend some time in a Chinese hospital before getting evacuated and sent home. That's it in a nutshell. The movie takes time to tell this story, but it's evenly paced overall. One sequence that does take a bit longer is showing the men learning how to take off and land their planes on an aircraft carrier, which is actually fascinating and shows how difficult and dangerous a thing that can be. At this point, the Americans had joined the war, and it's telling how the Chinese folk in the film, China being our allies, were treated with dignity and respect when they might not have been otherwise. This is a quite good and well-made film. One thing I had difficulty with personally were the scenes where they are actually dropping the bombs over Japan. Not nuclear, we hadn't gotten there yet, but still nasty stuff. And it struck me for the first time how, when films of this era show such a thing, they seem, at least, to be using real footage. And I was just like, am I watching people die? It was a highly disturbing thought, and I shielded my eyes every time afterward. I do not care if those people would be long dead anyway. I have a real problem watching the moment of someone's death. So, yes, some potentially difficult parts, so be forewarned. Other than that, not a bad flick at all. They Won't Believe Me, 1947. Directed by Irving Bichelle. Starring Robert Young and Susan Hayward. 1 hour, 35 minutes. Speaking of Robert Young, it's quite interesting that this was just a year or two before Young stepped into his role as America's dad in Father Knows Best. This is quite a different role, with Young being a philandering husband who gets mixed up with Hayward's office gal and gold digger, and he ends up concocting a plan to leave his rich wife, but get some of her money to be getting on with. The financial part of the plan falls through, but he agrees to marry Hayward anyway, and gives her a ring. Soon after, a car accident claims Hayward's life in a fiery blaze, and Young is able to identify her as his wife due to the ring on her finger, which leaves him almost free. As his real wife is currently alone at their country ranch, he heads back with the plan to do away with her as well. However, on arrival, he finds her already dead through a riding accident. Eventually, a former co-worker, who has been suspicious of him all along, calls in the police. They find his real wife's body and put Young on trial for her murder, hence the title. He tells this convoluted story in flashback while on the witness stand. Then, when the jury comes to read the verdict, he attempts to jump out an open window and is shot dead. It's a good attempt at a film noir, and Young's performance is engaging, but basically it boils down to unlikable characters making one stupid decision after another, which can be very wearing on the viewer's patience. I don't recommend this for that reason. They Live by Night, 1949. Directed by Nicholas Ray. Starring Farley Granger and Kathy O'Donnell. 1 hour, 35 minutes. Speaking of characters making stupid decisions, this is Granger's young small-time crook making stupid decisions while loved by O'Donnell's daughter of a fellow crook who is leading him astray. The crook, not the daughter. There's not much more to it than that. The two do attempt to strike out on their own, getting married and hiding out in a small cabin home, but eventually the old gang finds them and ropes Granger into another heist, wherein one of the gang is killed. The other member dies a bit later on, leaving the police still looking for Granger. They go to a roadside hotel run by the wife of one of the gang members who has been convicted prior to the events of the film. The wife gives up their location to the police in exchange for her husband's release. Granger is shot dead by the police and is mourned by a now pregnant O'Donnell. This is where I say it's another one of those films, because really there are so many films like this, supposedly about hot-blooded youths getting mixed up in events over their heads and coming to a bad end. Howard Da Silva, a veteran character actor of stage and screen who endearingly portrayed Benjamin Franklin in the film version of 1776, is one of the gang veterans, but otherwise there is nothing to see here. Task Force, 1949. Directed by Delmar Dawes. Starring Gary Cooper and Jane Wyatt. 1 hour and 56 minutes. A military battleship commander reflects on the events of his professional life on the occasion of his retirement. I thought this would be a dull film and definitely too long, and I'd say that, happily, I was wrong. Other than Cooper obviously not being a spring chicken when the flashbacks begin, there's really nothing wrong with this film other than nitpicks. We see Cooper start out as a pilot with no desire to deal with ships. He loses a comrade and gets the unfortunate job of breaking the news to the man's wife, Wyatt. The two eventually fall in love and marry, and we see their relationship moving along in concurrence with the professionalities, as it were. Cooper's years cover the First War, then move into World War II, with he and his wife being stationed at Pearl Harbor when the planes fly over. Again, real footage is incorporated, making this hard for me to watch. He likewise learns how to take off and land on an aircraft carrier, and it's just as entrancing as before. He also has to navigate politics throughout the military. This all could be very dry, but somehow it just isn't. Another interesting part is that when the conflict enters a more modern day, as of the time of the movie, of course, it suddenly switches from black and white to color. Not certain that was necessary, as it doesn't really add anything, but it doesn't detract either. It was a neat enough idea. I'm still kind of shocked, as from the title and thumbnail and description, etc., I never expected to, but I don't mind recommending this one. Stagecoach, 1939. Directed by John Ford. Starring John Wayne and Claire Trevor. 1 hour and 36 minutes. I've seen this one before, but not in a long while, so I didn't mind saddling up and experiencing it one more time. This is the classic tale of disparate personalities on the difficult and dangerous trip on a stagecoach line, eventually working together to help deliver a baby and later fend off a native attack. On top of everything, Wayne is a wanted man who has broken out of prison and has a beef with a group of brothers who not only made the claim that led to his imprisonment, but who killed his own father and brother. At the end, he settles his account with a bit of pew-pew and pow-pow, and the sympathetic lawman sends him and Trevor's hooker with a heart of gold, which he so frequently played, off to start a new life together. This film is notable for many things. Excellent direction and cinematography, stunts which still hold up, they covered them on Corridor Crew, a plot with tropes that handles them well without getting too maudlin, and equal handling of supporting characters, giving each enough depth for the audience to feel we really know them. Even for the time, this had noticeable tropes, but this is a perfect example that even old tropes can serve your story if they're handled well. This movie holds up, and as I like to say, is a classic for a reason. Go and watch it if you haven't seen it. Brief interlude. Here I would like to note 3 movies that I did not watch for this list, simply because I've seen them all numerous times and they're decently well known today, so I didn't think I really had to cover them. Speed is the 90s tale with the far-fetched plot of the bus with a bomb that will explode if the bus goes below 50 miles an hour, with our erstwhile Keanu as the cop inveigling himself onto the bus to guide Sandra Bullock's fantastic driving skills, along with Dennis Hopper in one of his cuckoo-crazy bad guy roles. It's good fun. Then there's Spirited Away, a Miyazaki film about a young girl who ends up trapped in a dream world and has to figure out how to survive and find her way out. I've seen it twice now. The second time to see if I liked it any better. I'm sorry. I really, really am, but there's just something about it I'm not getting. I'm not much on anime in the first place, with the much overlooked and delightfully meta Sergeant Frog being an exception, as I find the way the characters react kind of unrealistic and thusly annoying. But I do appreciate the fact that, although the style is not for me, many others enjoy it. And I can still understand why they enjoy it. The artistry is great in its way, and the imagination is undeniable. But it just... I don't know. Something's just not clicking for me. Like with serious jazzy-type jazz music. I want to like it. I just feel like I don't get it. I've seen 2 Miyazaki films so far, My Neighbor Totoro, and just couldn't get into them, but I promise I will keep trying. Thirdly, there's Singin' in the Rain. And if you haven't seen that, I don't know what to tell you. It's a delight from beginning to end. If you're not into musicals, there are maybe a few sequences you can fast forward through, but still, the basic plot is informed and entertaining, and the performances are solid. So, go watch these all if you haven't. I'll wait. Back to it. Shadows, 1959, directed by John Cassavetes, starring Ben Carruthers and Leila Goldoni, 1 hour and 27 minutes. I haven't seen much Cassavetes, and thought this was an interesting one for a white man to tackle. It focuses on 3 black siblings in the big city, and how they have to live their lives dealing with white people, among other things. The sister is white passing, and hooks up with a white fellow at a party, who sweet-talks her into giving up her virginity. He keeps up the sweet talk until she has him drop her back at her apartment and introduces him to her brothers. Suddenly he realizes he has an urgent appointment and has to hurry away. Shh. To his credit, the bar is so low, he does apologize for his behavior later in the film. One of the other brothers looks the most black of the 3 and attempts to find work as a nightclub entertainer, having to take jobs far beneath him because they're the only thing being offered to him. The other brother spends most of his time wandering around the city with his 2 likewise aimless friends, 2 white fellows who, to their eternal credit, aren't bothered at all by his race. After all 3 of them get in a fight with the boyfriends of a few girls who they have attempted to pick up, he decides he wants something more out of life, and heads out, ostensibly, to find it, although it's left open whether or not this will stick. This is a loose-looking film that was promoted as being unscripted, but in fact was heavily scripted and rehearsed. You'd never know. It's very well done. It does a great job of looking at these issues at the time it was in and from a certain perspective. There is never any doubt that these people are people who deserve to live their damn lives just like anyone else. Again, sheesh. A pretty good film, this one. Senso, 1954. Directed by Luchino Visconti, I'm guessing? Starring Alida Valli and Farley Granger. 1 hour 57 minutes. Valli is an Italian countess in sometime in the late 1800s. I don't know my history well enough here to say for sure. Granger is the Austrian soldier, fluent in Italian, who crosses paths with her at an opera. Although he insults her cousin, a figure in the Italian resistance, and those two almost come to a duel, and the Austrians here are the invaders, which is interesting because Valli actually, as far as I know, has Austrian ancestry. Anyway, Valli is intrigued nonetheless, and she and Granger begin an affair. Eventually, it is revealed that Granger has only been using her in order to take her money and use it to obtain a fraudulent medical release from the army. She denounces him to his superiors, he is shot as a deserter, and she goes mad from the ordeal, wandering into the night while screaming his name. Starting with an opera was ideal because that's basically what this movie is. That said, it's really quite good, considering it could so easily veer into melodrama. Valli and Granger make a good couple, and their performances are overall quite intriguing, making you want to stick through to see what becomes of them. It helps that you don't know for sure that Granger is two-faced until the final act, as it were. The thing that got me is that once again, this is a film where they cast an American actor, probably because they thought it would help their box office, but the actor didn't actually speak the language. It got me for sure because Granger seemed to be speaking Italian, and I can only assume he was speaking it very badly, as I looked it up and yep, he was dubbed. So, I get casting an American actor, but then again, I don't. Like, at least find one who speaks the language? Wouldn't that be easier? Am I making too much sense? Still, this was much better than it had a right to be. I don't feel the ending quite works, but maybe that's just me. It's a good film on the whole. Seance on a Wet Afternoon, 1964. Directed by Brian Forbes. Starring Kim Stanley and Richard Attenborough. 1 hour 55 minutes. Stanley and Attenborough are what would seem a nondescript British couple. Stanley, however, believes herself a psychic and holds regular seances, using the supposed connection with the spirit of her dead son to speak with others in the world beyond. To her husband, she makes the claim that their son has asked her to do more. She concocts the scheme of their kidnapping a young rich girl, not just for ransom, but to hopefully boost her standing as a psychic when she guides the family to find their daughter. Her husband goes along with the scheme out of hopeless love for her, but balks when she amends the plan to actually kill the girl, hoping she will be a companion for their son's spirit. It is then revealed that she never actually knew her son. He was stillborn, and she was not allowed to see his body for closure, leaving her emotionally fractured and mentally unstable from the experience. Her husband, knowing at last that no matter what he does for her, it will never be enough, purposely leaves the girl alive where the authorities will find her. This is an actor's film, and boy, does it deliver on that front. Really, it's Stanley's film, and her sweet-coated delivery proves to be that way because she really, genuinely believes she is doing the right thing. Attenborough's quietly submissive husband, who goes farther than he wants to until he finally reaches his limit, but never stops loving his wife, is a study in how to let the other actor have the spotlight while being an undeniably integral part yourself. It's so good. It's just so good. Watch this one. Screaming Eagles, what a title. 1956. Directed by Charles Haas. Starring Tom Tryon and Jacqueline Biar. 1 hour 19 minutes. I didn't have great hopes for this one either. It's about a squadron of World War II Army recruits who parachute into France and battle their way through various hostile encounters while bonding and dealing with the deaths and injuries of their comrades. Tryon's recruit is initially hostile to his fellow soldiers, a situation not helped by his receiving a Dear John letter nearly right off the bat. He is almost thrown out, but his comrades decide to give him a chance. Although he still gets blamed for nearly everything that goes wrong during a mission, he proves himself a hero by saving lives and assisting his leader, who is blinded in one of the skirmishes. It's a fairly simple story and seems to have been filmed on the cheap, but overall, it's not too bad at all. There are many instances that one can believe were lifted from real life, and if there aren't any real names in the cast, Martin Milner of, among other things, the original 13 Ghosts is the only one I recognized, there is no shortage of technical advisors. Bit of trivia I just found out. Tryon and co-star Jan Merlin, who portrayed the squad leader, actually switched roles after finding out that at one point the leader was supposed to be carried by the obstinate soldier. Tryon was much taller than Merlin, so switching only made sense. This is a good flick to check out, particularly if you're into war films. Scenes from a Marriage, 1973. Directed by Ingmar Bergman. Starring Liv Ullmann and Erland Josephson. 2 hours and 27 minutes. Okay, so this film is actually a condensed version of the original 6-episode television series of the same name. However, it doesn't noticeably suffer from the truncation, or I don't think it does, not having seen the series. Josephson and Ullmann are a married couple with 2 daughters. When we first meet them, they are being interviewed for a magazine article, I think, regarding the success of their marriage and what they think makes it so successful. Predictably, things start to go awry thereafter. The entire situation covers about 10 years, with the husband leaving his wife for another woman, the husband and wife's divorce, her remarriage, and their eventual reconciliation of a sort. Throughout, the relationship rides the gamut of emotion, with a predictably Bergman-esque script, although there's so much dialogue and also it comes across so honestly that I wonder if it was partly improv. Of people speaking with more truth and more completely than they probably would in real life. This was long, but quite excellent. I kept watching while the characters, made their separate points, and I kept going, well, what about this, though? And then this that I was thinking of would be addressed. It was exquisite. And Ullmann's character's journey as she grows, learns, and comes to understand herself as a woman was everything I wanted to see. Really, really like this one, if that wasn't already obvious. Scanners, 1981. Directed by David Cronenberg. Starring Stephen Lack and Jennifer O'Neill. 1 hour, 43 minutes. Dude, you remember that scene in Scanners when that dude's head exploded? Well, now I do. So, the scanners of the title are people with psychic powers that can control the minds and to some extent bodies of regular people, even to the point of, yes, making their heads explode. And there are some gross parts here, but not nearly as many as I'd expect given it's Cronenberg. Lack is a newly found scanner recruited by a secretive organization to track down a rogue scanner, portrayed by Michael Ironside. The newly found scanner meets up with fellow scanner O'Neill in the process. There is a psychic battle between the good and evil scanner fellows at the end, which gets a bit gross, but mostly looks ridiculous. And given that this is classified as a horror movie, spoiler alert, there is no happy ending. The movie has its points, with Patrick McGoohan giving an engaging performance as the organization's resident expert on the scanners. But there's not a ton to be said here. When Michael Ironside is one of your best actors, that's really not saying something. Lack was apparently cast for his being able to do an intense gaze from his big blue eyes. It's not an absolutely horrible entry into the genre, but it's far from being one of the best either. Sawdust and Tinsel, 1953. Directed by Ingmar Bergman. starring, oh boy, I'm gonna mess this up, Ake Grunberg? Ake Grunberg? And Harriet Anderson. 1 hour 33 minutes. Grunberg runs a circus which travels throughout the Swedish countryside, a married man who has a relationship with trick rider Anderson. When they stop in a certain town, he heads off to visit his wife and 3 sons, confessing to her in the process his desire to give it all up and settle down. His wife, doing quite well without him, recognizes this will never work and rebuffs him. Anderson, meanwhile, is intrigued by an actor in a local theater troupe, and likewise confesses to him her desire to leave the circus, if only he'll let her transfer her affections to him. The actor, however, is only interested in one thing, and manipulates Anderson into giving it up, gifting her with a necklace that he claims will bring her money, but which proves to be worthless. Grunberg learns of her infidelity and is despondent, culminating in his beginning a fight with the actor when the latter goes to a performance of the circus, with Grunberg then losing miserably. At the end, he and Anderson make it up and accept each other and their situation as they are and move on to the next town. I didn't recognize Anderson right away, having seen her in his later work Through a Glass Darkly, but once I did, it was a delight to experience her in such a different role. I didn't personally feel this one was a strong entry for Bergman. I've only seen so many of his so far, and this was 10 years into his career, but it feels like he was still finding his voice and working on hitting his stride. It's fair, but more for fans of the director who want to check out his entire journey. Last but most definitely least, Santa Fe Trail, 1940. Directed by our old friend with a nearly unpronounceable name, at least for me, Michael Curtiz, starring Errol Flynn, and you'll never believe it, Olivia de Havilland. 1 long hour and 50 interminable minutes. Okay, so this one is a historical, somewhat epic about young fellows George Custer, played by Ronald Reagan, and Jeb Stuart, Flynn, as they graduate from a military academy and get assigned to Kansas to try to thwart adversary John Brown. We follow their exploits up until Brown's defeat at Harper's Ferry. This movie takes the very, let's say, interesting tack of Brown being the misguided villain following his own egotistical hubris in attempting to free slaves even if those slaves aren't certain they want to be freed. Now, I'm willing to admit that Brown was a firebrand and his tactics weren't necessarily the absolute way to go. But this film, although admitting a bit of a gray area, just came down hard on the slavery bad but war worse, so let's take our time and do this in a peaceful way of thinking. Now, there are points to be had in such an argument. War is bad and peace is good. But with a historical perspective, which we had when this movie was made, it's obvious that more than enough time had already been spent on slavery and nothing was getting done. In that case, it's hard to blame Brown for getting impatient and trying to nudge things, even though, again, I do not condone his tactics or violence. It's especially interesting given that this came out in December of 1940, just 1 year before the US got into World War II. The movie's message seems to be that of those at the time of making who were on the side of keeping out of the war. When the war came to us, that tune changed pretty damn quick. And watching it in these modern times is another whole historical perspective. If nothing else, having actual black people portraying former slaves who then get pissed at Brown, his character did leave them in a burning barn to die, admittedly not cool, but then stating that they would rather forego freedom if this is what it's like. Whew, boy, is this ever white? Balls, basically, to not only have this be your stance, but to make the black folks on screen back you up. In the parlance of the youths nowadays, it's giving all kinds of cringe. The only thing I liked was Raymond Massey's intense performance as Brown. But But then again, it's been kind of obvious already that I am a Massey fan, a Masshead, and would gladly watch him read the telephone book. Anyway, remember They Died with Their Boots On, another Flynn de Havilland revisionist history about Custer? This movie, sadly, is even worse. Do not give this one your time. Okay, well, it was a long trek, but we got there in the end. Again, as usual, have you seen any of these movies? Do any of them intrigue you or not intrigue you for whatever reasons? Put it all in the comments. I'd love to hear. It's been a week. It's been a heck of a week, and covering some of these movies in light of that week has been, oh boy, it's been another whole ball game, as it were. So yes, I'm just going to repeat myself and say, everybody, hang in there as best you can. Okay, I'm pulling for you. Take care of yourselves and each other. And I'll see you next week. Bye now.